Shabbat Shalom. I'm Cantor David Proser of Kempsville Conservative Synagogue, Kehillat Bet HaMidrash in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And this is Torah commentary for Shabbat of June 20th, 2020, corresponding to the 28th day of Sivan, 5780. We thank Rabbi Joyce Newmark, Rabbi Joseph Prauser, Rabbi Adam Rosenbaum, Rabbi Michael Gold, and the United Synagogue Torah Sparks series for their various teachings and publications about this week's Parsha. This Shabbat, June 20th, we read the Parsha of Shelach Lecha in the book of Bamidbar. Parsha begins on page 840 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 623 of the Hertz. At God's instruction, Moshe dispatches 12 spies, each representing his tribe, into the land of Canaan, or Canaan, to reconnoiter and report back on the prospects of conquest. See what kind of country it is. Are the people who dwell there strong or weak? Few or many. They return 40 days later, bearing samples of the land's fruit and produce, but also with a pessimistic estimation of Israel's tactical prospects. The land is flowing with milk and honey, they report, but the people who live there were powerful. They fearfully described themselves as mere grasshoppers compared to the giants indigenous to the promised land. Infected with the spies' faithlessness, the Israelites tearfully lament their condition to Moshe and Aharon and declare they want to return to Egypt. Only Joshua and Caleb, who were among the spies, deliver a positive report on their observations, but they are met with a violent public response. A disappointed and disheartened God threatens to disown and destroy his chosen people and to begin anew with Moshe. Moshe appeases God on the nation's behalf, securing his pardon for their iniquity with a prayerful petition that we repeat each Yom Kippur Eve. God's verdict is not one of absolute forgiveness, however. The current generation of Israelites is condemned to die off in the wilderness, which they will wander for 40 years, 1 year for each day of the spies' journey, and only their children will enter the Holy Land. The spies themselves, except for Joshua and Caleb, die in a plague. The Israelites, against Moshe's express instructions and in violation of God's command, attempt to enter Canaan, leaving both their long-suffering prophetic leader and the Ark of the Covenant behind. They meet with disaster in battle at Hormah and suffer a crushing defeat at the hands of the Amalekites and Canaanites. The Parsha continues with a variety of laws about sacrifices, including the requirement of setting aside a portion of dough in what the rabbis will later call challah. Those who break commandments accidentally can atone via sacrifice, whereas intentional transgression is punished more harshly. The principle that a defiant sinner is to be cut off from the people, that he bears his guilt, is followed immediately by a case study. A hapless Israelite is discovered flagrantly violating the Sabbath by gathering firewood. The miscreant is placed in custody while Moshe seeks God's instructions about how to address the case. God's verdict is severe. The man is taken outside the camp and stoned to death by the community. Parshat Shelach concludes with the prescription of tzitzit, the requirement that fringes intended to remind us of God's commandments are to be placed on the corners of our garments. The passage is familiar to us because it is the final paragraph of the Shema. Tzitzit as I have on the corner of my tallis. If we look back at the first part of our Parsha and compare it to the end, we find that our narrative this week is bookended by sight. At the beginning of the Parsha, Moshe tells those selected to go up and recon the land to see what kind of a country it is. Similarly, sight closes the Parsha as the Israelites are commanded to make tzitzit on their garments so that they can look at it and recall all of the commandments of the Lord and observe them. In the first instance, sight becomes a stumbling block for the spies, as this sense triggers fear and panic, while in the second instance, sight is meant to spark memory and to encourage observance. How can we understand the depth of sight? Seeing is all-encompassing, for it is not only a physical sense to which the Torah refers, but also a spiritual and interpretive dimension. It is seeing that should lead us to embrace a deep, rich, and resonant truth, and it should bring us a step closer to God. The negativity engendered by seeing at the opening of our Parsha becomes redeemed and repaired through the blessing of tzitzit. The knotty texture of the fringes, combined with the stark contrast between the blue and the white, should remind us all of the challenges that one encounters along the journey to fulfill God's mitzvot. The Haftorah for this Shabbat is from the book of Joshua, chapter 2, verses 1 to 24, beginning on page 835 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 635 of the Hertz. In preparation for his invasion of Canaan, Joshua sends 2 spies to scout the land. Go, reconnoiter the region of Jericho, he commands. The connection to today's Torah Parsha is that Moshe used similar terminology when he commanded 12 spies to go see what kind of country they were about to enter. Moshe's attempt to scout out the land failed because of the negative report of 10 of the spies. It led to a failure of nerve among the people. Joshua's command to his spies thus closes a historical cycle. In other words, Joshua hopes to complete what Moshe had begun. The dominant relation between the Parsha and the Haftorah is the difference between failure and success. After making a successful contact with a harlot named Rachav and guaranteeing her safety and the safety of her family, the spies are hidden by Rachav from the army of the king of Jericho and are able to make their escape possible so that they could return to Joshua and deliver the message, "The Lord has delivered the whole land into our power. In fact, all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before us." Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, and as always, we look forward to the day when we can do this in person in our sanctuaries, at Kehillat Bet HaMidrash, and at Temple Israel in person with you all there. Thank you for watching.